Hello, I'm Shelley Duvall.
Hello, my name is Nevaeha Fernandez, hosting alongside Adriana Paine and Kylie Rezendes. On this episode of In the Mind of Hollywood Film, we will delve into the world of former Hollywood film star Shelley Duvall and her drastic decline in mental health after the production of The Shining. Shelley Alexis Duvall was born on July 7, 1949, in Fort Worth, Texas. Duvall was the eldest sibling and the only girl among her three brothers. Shelley's mother was a real estate broker and her father was a lawyer. As a teenager, Shelley Duvall graduated from Waltrip High School in Texas. At first, she had become a cosmetics salesperson. That is, until 1970, when she was discovered by talent scouts at a local party. Her career took off by the late 1970s after starring in films directed by multi-award-winning director Robert Altman for his reinventing of the art that is film. And Shelley Duvall is now known as a former multi-award-winning actress, producer, writer, and singer. Best known for her roles as Olive Oyl on Popeye.
He does not have your eyes, he's got my eyes. He's got your mouth.
Does he do?
And Wendy Torrance from The Shining.
We'll get you something as soon as we get to the hotel, okay? Okay, Mom.
At the Cannes Film Festival, she had won the Best Actress award for her performance in the film Three Women. This being one of her many accolades for her astounding performances, but her career-changing role truly began in 1980.
Starring alongside Jack Nicholson in The Shining, the then 28-year-old Duvall was put through immense mental trauma and stress during the 13 months of consistent filming for her role as Wendy Torrance. This was due to director Stanley Kubrick, who wanted raw emotion from his actors.
Here's Johnny!
The Shining's famous Here's Johnny line will get the viewer's hearts racing, as Jack Torrance busts down a bathroom door with an axe. Shelley's heart was also racing, as she had no clue her co-star would be using an axe to break down the door. This was per request of Kubrick, who kept her in the dark for most of the scene, to ensure he would get raw emotion from her. This famous scene made the Guinness Book of World Records for the most takes ever with spoken dialogue. The scene was shot 127 times and left Shelley disheveled, dehydrated, and she had become so stressed she began losing clumps of her hair. The first time filming this intense scene, they had not informed Shelley that her on-screen husband would be breaking down the door with an axe. They had her gripping her weapon, a baseball bat, for such a long period of time that her hands became raw and wounded. She had to keep up her emotional state for all takes because of Kubrick, which left her exhausted. When Shelley showed these clumps of hair she was losing to not only her co-star Nicholson, but to Kubrick as well, Kubrick advised everyone on set to keep themselves from showing Shelley any sympathy, leaving her to be isolated for the 13 months they were on set.
I pulled hunks of hair out on the windowsill, and the back got caught.
Need to trim that.
Hunks of hair.
Oh, look.
Okay.
It just comes out.
Okay, right now, fellas.
No rush.
There's more to come, Shell. Come on.
Come on, I'm
Let's get
ready.
it set up anyway now, boys.
Go, come on, Sean. Get the dummy. No, she isn't carrying him. That's right. Okay, let's go.
Have the finder, please, the 18. 18 in the tube, swing it all back in here, yeah. It's got to go outside, then what's time?
It is 25 to 1.
Fine, don't sympathize with Shelley.
And don't sympathize with Shelley.
Shelley Duvall before the role had actually been scouted by Stanley Kubrick. Originally, Jack Nicholson and writer of the book The Shining, Stephen King, had opted for Jessica Lange to play alongside him as Wendy Torrance, but Stanley was adamant that it was Duvall who he wanted as Wendy. But although Kubrick took a fascination in Duvall, his actions toward her would make you assume the opposite, isolating her on set and giving specific orders for cast and crew to not sympathize or properly interact with her, even getting into frequent spats with the young actress, telling her she was wasting everyone's time, opposed to Nicholson, who he gave constant praise to.
You've got to look desperate, Shelley. You're just wasting everybody's time now.
I can't even get
Well,
this
bring it
door
down.
open.
After a long day of filming, Shelley described it to have been sort of a scream therapy for her. Day after day of screaming, crying, and running from her co-star Nicholson as he portrayed her possessed and slowly becoming unhinged husband. The conditions for Duvall were so bad that she kept water bottles near her at all times to continuously hydrate herself, as crying had begun dehydrating her from how much she was doing it. She confided in Jack Nicholson because he was the only one on set who was kind to her, and she goes on to describe him as her rock while she trudged through these conditions. Shelley Duvall, although often butting heads with Kubrick, had in some ways respected his directing techniques, stating that she wouldn't put herself through those conditions again, but definitely knew that there was a method to his madness.
If it hadn't been for that, volley of ideas and sometimes butting of heads together, it wouldn't have come out as good as it did. And it also helps get the emotion up and the concentration up, because it builds up anger, actually, and you get more out of yourself. And he knew that, and he knew he was getting more out of me by doing that. So it was sort of like a game.
After the emotional trauma, Shelley Duvall had almost considered leaving her acting career behind for good. Duvall's biggest critic had been Stephen King, an American award-winning author who wrote The Shining. His biggest critique of the character was of the offbeat portrayal of Wendy Torrance. His original writing of Wendy had been a tough character, able to hold her own and stand her ground, whereas he described Kubrick's portrayal to be misogynistic and called Duvall's version of the character a screaming dish rag.
I have a real problem with The Shining, and Stanley Kubrick knew that I had a problem with The Shining. I had a discussion with him beforehand. He said, "Stephen, Stanley Kubrick here. Don't you agree that all stories of ghosts are fundamentally optimistic?" I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Well, if there are ghosts, it means we survive death, and that's fundamentally an optimistic view, isn't it?" And I said, "Well, Mr. Kubrick, what about hell?" And there was a long pause on the telephone line, and then he said in a very stiff and very different voice, "I don't believe in hell."
He goes on to express that Kubrick's envisionment of the storyline is cold, and King's original point of his book is to bring the reader in and make them feel warm and welcome among the storyline.
You.
Did you like Kubrick's film of The Shining?
No. Cold. I'm not a cold guy. I mean, I think one of the things that people relate to in my books is there's a warmth, there's a reaching out and saying to the reader, I want you to be a part of this. And with Kubrick's The Shining, I felt that it was very cold, very, well, looking at these people, but they're like ants in an anthill. Aren't they doing interesting?
After the filming of The Shining, Shelley Duvall had worked on making smaller appearances in TV shows and movies. She also launched a popular children's series named Fairy Tale Theater in 1982 up to the late 1990s, until she had altogether almost vanished. In 2002, Duvall had moved to a ranch in the small town of Blanco, Texas. She had not been in any films while living a quiet and peaceful life. At this ranch, Duvall had a collection of exotic animals, but over the years her mental health was reportedly deteriorating.
In 2016, Duvall made a reportedly controversial appearance on The Dr. Phil Show. She revealed she suffered from mental illness, proven by her display of actions throughout the interview. When asked about her late Popeye co-star Robin Williams, she claimed that he wasn't dead, but in fact a shapeshifter.
I don't think he's dead.
Yeah, you don't think he's dead?
No.
Where do you think he is?
Shape-shifting.
Yeah.
He looks real good in some forms, in other forms he doesn't.
Another claim of Duvall's was that she had a metal disc implanted in her leg and was being threatened.
Are you
you know, damned if I do, damned if I don't. I mean, if I say I'm healthy, first thing they'll do is hurt me tonight.
Who will hurt you?
Whoever is in security or at the bank.
After the episode aired, many people were quick to take to their social media platforms such as Twitter to reprimand the famous TV show host for his exploiting of Duvall's mental health for entertainment. One of Dr. Phil's biggest critics was Vivian Kubrick, Stanley Kubrick's daughter, who called for a boycott on the episode, calling it a form of lurid and exploitative entertainment. During the airing of the episode, Dr. Phil offered Shelley a chance at getting psychiatric help, and she agreed. But when she arrived at the facility, Duvall refused to sign any of the papers to give permission to the treatment facility to work with her, and after 3 days, they discharged her and let her go home.
Don't forget to tune into episode 2 of In the Mind of Hollywood Film for a deeper look into Joaquin Phoenix and his experience with mental health issues after starring in the hit movie Joker.